Good afternoon, one and all, and welcome to episode 275 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, coming to you live from YouTube. You're very welcome if you're watching the recording or you're watching live. I hope you are mostly watching live because we have got a very special interview subject in the studio today. One of those interview subjects where I think, okay, how on earth am I going to do justice to this person in a 30-second introduction? She is one of this country's, and I think probably we can say one of the world's most acclaimed beauty journalists. If I were to, and also I should say, she is a proper journalist. And what I mean by that is that she writes for proper newspapers and proper magazines. She's written for Vogue, for Elle, for Grazia, for The Telegraph, for Red, Stylist, Good Housekeeping, amongst many, many others. She will be known to most of you, I think, as the beauty editor and resident beauty writer at The Guardian, a post that she has held for well over 10 years. She's a best-selling writer. Two of her books that I'm sure all of you will be familiar with are Pretty Honest and Pretty Iconic. She's got another beauty book coming out in September called Everything is Washable and Other Life Lessons, which is a great title. But what makes her particularly interesting is that she's also made a fantastic crossover to digital media. So she has a huge Instagram presence. I know that a lot of you do not need me to tell you about her Instagram videos, her Instagram posts that are so important to many of you out there. I can see that from the comments coming through now. And she also regularly appears on television. She's done podcasts. She's appeared on the radio. And just to top it all off, a couple of weeks ago, she launched her own skincare brand. So please welcome to the studio, the one and only Sali Hughes. Hi, Sali. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing really well. I'm very happy to be here, I must say.
And we should say that you are coming to us from the South Coast. Is that right? Are we allowed to be a little bit more specific than that, or?
Yeah, no, of course. So I live in Brighton. I've just got home from London. I've been in meetings today and doing some filming. So I've just come through the door, taken off my coat, poured a glass of water, and here I am.
And we are very, very, very grateful. Thank you very much for taking the time, Sali. So many comments coming through already. Now, those of you who watch regularly, you know the drill. There will come a point when I will say, okay, start sending in your questions now. And when you do ask a question, it's always really fascinating for us watching to find out where it is that you are, although obviously you're not obliged to say where you are. But I have to share some of these comments with you, Sally. Holly has already written to say, hello to my two lockdown saviors. And and congrats on the skincare launch, Sally. I've been using most of the products every day and I'm loving them, which is not bad for a range that's only been out for a couple of weeks.
That's so nice.
Jenny saying congrats on the skincare launch, Sally. And I did have a first question lined up, but I think I'm just going to shelve that for the moment and go with this comment because I was just explaining to Sally, we had a kind of 5 minutes pre-chat before we started. Some of you have been leaving these comments already about Sally's famous video of fragrances on the mantelpiece. So here's Vladimir saying something about it. Then we've got Anna saying, Vladimir, that exact video got me into fragrances, period. And there was another one as well. Janet saying, Sally's mantle video, best perfume video ever. I'm extremely ashamed to confess that I didn't know what this video was, but for me and probably the one other person out there who didn't know the video, Sally, tell us what it was, and then I will have to link to it below. What was this video that got people into perfume?
So I haven't seen that video since I made it. So I can't really remember much about it. But what I do remember about it is that I'd been making videos all afternoon and I had enough energy left to make a last video, but I couldn't be bothered to go and get a load of product out. I hadn't sorted or filed through any product for inclusion. So I thought, well, I know what I can do really easily. I could just talk about my own perfumes. I thought, well, I'll just do the perfumes I keep on the mantelpiece in my bedroom. I'll just knock that one out. And without going to get anything. So I ended up doing that. And as with everything with perfume, you just get lost in it, don't you? You just get carried away. And so I made a video, I uploaded it, and it's the most, apart from some in the bathrooms with very famous people, it's my most popular standalone, nobody else in it but me video that I've ever made. which is lovely for me because it's about perfume. And as we know, perfume will typically not get the figures that other branches of beauty will. But people say to me all the time that it's their favorite video. Apparently people watch it to go to sleep too. And they keep revisiting it. The most requested video ever is a follow-up, which I am going to do. I am going to do that.
Right, so we've heard it here. We've got another one here. Holly, who wrote just earlier, said that video also got me into perfume. That's amazing. So you're this, you know, one-woman enabler, Sally. I think in your biog it says as well that if you endorse a product, it experiences, you know, the Delia effect, where suddenly lots and lots of people go out to buy it. So I definitely want to see what perfumes you had on the mantelpiece then. Now, my question to you was going to be a much more straightforward, what perfume are you wearing today, just to get us going?
Okay, so today I'm wearing Perfumery, so Lynn Harris, and I'm wearing her Rainwood today, which I find absolutely perfect this time of year because it's sort of, it's damp, it's sodden, it's quite green. It really reflects that kind of rain on, rain off, rain on, rain off sort of feel. It's a bit kind of peaty and mossy and wet, but also light and happy and zestful. So it works, I think, for this time of year.
That's a great description, and a nice shout out for Lynn Harris as well. I think she needs to get a lot more attention for that Perfumery brand. Now, we haven't got unlimited time, obviously, and I'm very, very torn, Sally, between, you know, asking you questions about your work as a journalist, but also questions with your kind of geeky perfume hat on, because you are a self-confessed perfume geek. You love fragrance, but also I feel I want to take this opportunity to ask questions of somebody who knows a side of the journalism industry, the journalism world, that we don't often get insights to. And you will be well aware that the received wisdom out there about mainstream media is that people can't necessarily be as honest as they would like to be about the products that they write about because there's so much pressure from advertising. Okay, so we're getting an interesting reaction from you already. So my first question in that regard to you is, why is it that in the mainstream media we don't really have negative reviews of perfume in the same way that we might about, you know, films and books and things like that?
Well, that's a good question. So oh god, there's so much to unpack there, but my personal view on negative beauty reviews is that real estate is so precious. I only get 410 words a week, and I'm simply not going to waste them on something that's not to my taste. If I think something's a crap perfume, I just ignore it. However, if I think something's a really good perfume that is not to my taste, I will generally write about it. And so there are lots of genius perfumes that I've really praised in the past that I can't stand. You know, Angel is one of them. I can't bear it. However, I think it's an absolute masterpiece. And so for me, if something is interesting, if something is clever and well conceived, and I think people will appreciate it, then I write about it. The other problem with perfume, or just beauty generally, but especially perfume, the problem with negative reviews is I just think it's simply the most subjective thing in the world, right? And I don't like saying something's crap just because it's not my cup of tea, because there are lots of perfumes I like that other people think are crap. You know, I love J.Lo Glow. You know, if other people don't think that's a good perfume, well, fine, I understand it. It's a mass-produced kind of coaty perfume, whatever, but it makes me happy. And so I'm not wrong and they're not wrong, but I'm an opinion columnist, so all I can do is give my opinion.
But okay, so thanks for that. But the implication in what you're saying is that if you one day decided to devote 50 of your 410 words to slagging off a perfume, you would be able to do that. Is that right? Or would there then be pressure on you to say, oh, Sally, I'm not so sure because they're advertisers and...
Oh my God, no, never.
Okay.
So let me tell you about The Guardian. The Guardian don't know which products I'm going to write about until I send my copy. They are never, ever privy to that. Now, I know that There are glossy magazines where, you know, there are boxes that need to be ticked with advertisers and so on. And it's like, well, so-and-so's got a new serum out. We must make sure that we kind of massage that a bit because they've taken out 40 pages this year, whatever it is. That doesn't happen at all in my section of journalism. And that doesn't happen to me at all, ever, 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 ever. And so they don't know what I'm writing about until I send the copy through. The people I send the copy through don't work on advertising. They have no interest in beauty at all. They just take my word for what's good. And so there's no commercial pressure at all, and not once, and it's all credit to The Guardian, not once in 11 and a half years has anybody ever from any part of The Guardian sent me an email and said, can you just... Never. Nobody has ever said, it would really help us if you wrote about this. They would never ask me. And if they did ask me, I would leave. And they know that, but also they've never made any attempt to do that. It's just not what I do. And if I ever do commercial projects in the digital space, I feel quite sorry for the brand because they have to do it on the understanding that I'm never going to write about them in journalism. If we have a campaign happening in a social space, that's just not going to happen. So I'm very fortunate that my role at The Guardian has always allowed me to be completely free and completely honest and completely say what I want to say. But at the same time, it's not just luck, because I wouldn't work under any other circumstances.
No, and I get what you're saying. Would you say that that's kind of particular to The Guardian? I mean, you know, without naming names, I've had a couple of people, mostly from advertising departments of magazines, and I should say that these stories were in no way related to you or The Guardian or The Observer, but these advertising people almost sort of proudly saying to me, I went to that editor and she didn't like that perfume, but I told her she has to write about it because they're advertisers in our magazine. Are you aware that whether that kind of thing does genuinely happen, or are these just like myths and stories? And
it is certainly true that I know of many occasions of that happening, or incidences of that happening on glossy magazines. I really can't speak for other newspapers. I know that Funme at The Observer will work under the same conditions as me. I know that much because we're sister papers. So I know that Funme Feto's situation will be the same at The Observer as it is for me at The Guardian. I can't speak for other newspapers, but certainly I've never, ever been asked to scratch any backs. No brand has ever come in and tried to throw their weight around. And in fairness, I do think the brands in this industry absolutely know that I would never do that. And so they would never attempt it. You know, they would never, no brand who knows me, which is pretty much all of them, would ever go to The Guardian and say, we're taking out an advert, Sally needs to write about us, because they know that that would destroy their relationship with me, because I just absolutely wouldn't tolerate it. So nobody really tries.
So let's pick up on something else that you said. 410 words a week doesn't sound like a huge amount for, you know, products that are a very, very important part of this country's economy. Do you think we may get into a situation where we will see more copy? You know, why have you only got 410 words?
Well, I don't think we'll see more copy, because the reality is that people don't read long things anymore, and that's, you know, that's endlessly frustrating to me. People like video content, they like bite-sized things, they like short form things, and things don't really hold people's attention. People don't want to give time to consuming media, culture, arts, whatever. You know, it's depressing, but it is what it is. At one time, there was a spell at The Guardian where I think I had 250 words. It went down because they'd redesigned the page, and that was bloody awful. That was impossible. I almost left over that. I was so depressed by it. But for a good few years now, it's been back to 410. And I always use up every word. I tend to file 4.8. So any journalist will tell you, if you just slightly underfile, then they don't start cutting things out. But if you file exactly on or a little bit over, then you're screwed, because they'll always take out the bit you like the best.
So what was the point where you thought, okay, the majority of people are not interested in long form journalism, they don't want to read lots of things? So what was the point where you thought that you then needed to play the digital game as well, and you needed to get on Instagram and do all of that kind of thing?
No, it wasn't really like that. So the Guardian, I think most people in the media would agree that the Guardian and, funnily enough, the Daily Mail were the two newspapers who got really stuck into digital before anyone else. So the Guardian heavily, got heavily involved in digital and saw the future, basically, which was great. And so when I got the Guardian job, initially I had to make a video to go with every column. That's how it was initially. And that was quite a key part in me getting the job, because the person who had the job before me want to make videos for them, because she wanted to make her own videos for her own channel, which is completely fair enough. And so she was leaving because she didn't want to make videos. And I had to make a video for every column. So it came in built to the job, which was actually really nice, because it meant that I was an early adopter of kind of video coverage. And because I've always done lots and lots of radio, I was never scared of it. And I'm definitely somebody who, I don't like moaning about the future. I think lots of people become really entrenched in things and they get cross when things change. But I've always been somebody who's kind of fairly open to change and embracing new things. And so I was always suitably intrigued to do it. And so I went digital really early. I was quite a late adopter to Instagram, but in terms of video content, I went quite early, and it was built into the job.
Okay. Now, let's talk about perfume for a little bit specifically. You have been invited probably to, well, I would imagine to loads and loads and loads of launches, perfume launches. What would you say was the craziest, most bonkers perfume launch you've ever been to?
So my first ever beauty launch was a perfume launch. It was the launch of Happy for Men by Clinique. That was the first thing I ever went to when I was a very young journalist. And so I did that first. In terms of mad launches, so I went to Paris for the launch of Thierry Mugler cologne, and that was quite a marvelous experience for me. It was quite early on in my career, and it was just like a cocktail of brilliant things. So I went to Paris. It was my first overseas press trip I'd ever been on. I got to meet really, really, really amazing people. I absolutely loved the fragrance and still love the fragrance today. I think it's a masterpiece. I adore it. Absolutely love it with all my heart. Then I came home and wrote about it, and then I won my first Jasmine Award. And so,
oh wow!
I just I have such fond. Was it my? No, it's my second. Anyway, it was my first. Anyway, but I have such fond memories of the whole kind of thing. Went to Paris, met the whole team at Mugler, obsessed with the fragrance, won a Jasmine Award, did really well out of it. And it was just it was kind of magical to me. But then in terms of my career highlight, perfume-wise, not really a perfume launch, but when I was asked to host the 100th birthday anniversary celebrations for Number 5, that was one of the most important things I've ever done in my career. And although on the surface of it, it's I host events all the time for major brands, shouldn't be a big deal. But the reason that meant so much to me is that fragrance means so much to me, but also it meant so much to 13-year-old me. It just it meant everything. And I said to my agent, I probably shouldn't say this in case Chanel watch it, but I said to my agent, when Chanel approached me about it and asked me to do it, said they were interested in me doing it, I rang my agent and said, Chanel are going to call, they want me to do this thing. Do not play hardball over money. Whatever they want to give me, I'm doing it. And it's I basically told the agent I would pay them to do it, because I knew that if somebody else got to do it, I would cry and cry and cry and cry. I just couldn't not do it. It meant so much to me emotionally, and it meant so much to little girl me, who was so in love with Number 5, House of Chanel. And I think my husband laughed, because when I got the event and it was all booked and everything, my husband said, did little girl you ever imagine that you could monetize your encyclopedic knowledge of Chanel and Number 5? And I was like, no, and I can't believe I'm being paid to go to work to do this. It's just, I couldn't believe it. It was just amazing.
That's a great story. When did little girl and then not so little girl you realize that actually beauty journalism was what you were going to get into?
It was actually by accident. So I only ever wanted to be a journalist. That much came very early. I told my father when I was 4 that I wanted to write for magazines. I didn't know the word for journalist, but I said I wanted to be an author for magazines, is what I said to my dad. And he told me that I wanted to be a journalist. So he said, go on then, do that. It didn't become about beauty until quite late on, really. I always did bits of beauty because I knew a lot about it, but I'm a features writer, interviewer, and I worked on staff at magazines, and then gradually more and more beauty crept in, and then the column. So my whole career, I've written about normal things and beauty alongside it, and that's still true today.
Gosh, now the other thing that sort of made me think when you were telling that story was one of the questions I wanted to ask you about. You do all your journalism, and as you said, you write for this newspaper for whom integrity and transparency are very important, and you do work a lot with brands as well. You present events for brands, etc. Is there ever a conflict or a tension there? How do you kind of balance the two together? What if well, I don't know, you tell me, is there a conflict there of interest ever?
There isn't, and it's, you have to put your foot down a lot. So essentially, if I do something outside of journalism, like host an event or whatever it is, you're not getting in my column for months and months and months, and you're not getting in my column for this product at all. And so I think brands know that, though. Nobody ever really suggests it anymore because brands know that I'm not going to do it. So, for example, there's a skincare brand launching really soon. It's a skincare brand I've loved for years that I used to buy in America because it wasn't available here. And I used to buy it all the time, and they knew that I really loved it. And I recently met the founder, and I found it so interesting. They're finally launching over here. I was so excited by it. And they said, and we would love to do an Instagram live with you. We'd love to do a campaign with you on Instagram to introduce the brand. And I said, no, because I really want to write this column. I really want to write a column on it because I just think it's a great story. It's something I love so much, and those things don't happen every 5 minutes that something you love so much is launching. So I said, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to turn down the paid job because I want to write a column about it, and it's more important to me to write the column about it. And I think people know that that's what I'm like, and it's okay, because I just think you have to do things the way you feel is right. And my manager, for example, my agent, knows when I first signed with them, I said, you have to understand that 90% of working with me is saying no. And they were like, we get it, and we never want to change that because that's why you're the person you are. And I just say no to things every single day of the week, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I'm not saying that's anything special. I'm not boasting about that. Loads of people get offered far more things than me, but the amount I turn down is absolutely staggering. If I don't love it, I'm not doing it. And if I want to write about it editorially, I'm not doing it.
Oh, fascinating. Well, yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, actually, and we could talk about that for ages, but I want to move us on to other things. We're gonna sort of try and lighten things up and really get stuck into the perfume now. But at this point, I should also say quite a few questions are coming through. But if you have got any questions for Sally, then please stick them in the chat now, and I will keep an eye on that and choose as many of them as possible to put to Sally. But what we're going to do is we're going to do one of these thinking without, not overthinking type games. I'm going to shout out a perfume brand, and I want you to tell me your favorite perfume from that brand.
Okay.
Without overthinking. Let's see. So I'm going to start you off easy because I know that this is genuinely one of your favorite brands. Let's go Frederic Malle.
L'Eau d'Hiver.
Ah, why? Oh, so see, I've already contradicted myself and slowed us down. Why that one? I love that one, by the way.
I think it's a masterpiece. Jean-Claude Ellena is my favorite perfumer, living perfumer. I think he's such a genius. He's so my cup of tea. And L'Eau d'Hiver is just so perfect. It's so melancholic, and it's a symphony. It's a symphony. It's so clever and so gentle and melancholic and so transparent and yet so creamy. I just think it's a beautiful
I agree.
fragrance.
I'll try not to slow you down with the other ones, but anyway, no, right. So next one, Guerlain.
Ooh, oh, well, it's got to be Mitsuko.
Okay. Okay, right. Estee Lauder.
Oh, does it have to still exist? Okay,
No.
I really, really, really loved Beyond Paradise.
That's still
Um,
around. I thought Beyond Paradise was genius, but you tell me why you liked it.
I thought it was weird, and it's weird and complicated and clever and modern, and it was too ahead of its time, really. I think that's why it didn't do so well. I thought it was amazing, but also I have to say probably Youth Dew as well, because it's just such an icon, and
Yeah, true.
I love the whole story behind it. I love the romance of its history.
And next, Dior.
So that's an easy one for me. Because it was my first ever perfume, Miss Dior, and I mean the real Miss Dior.
Thank you for clarifying, Miss Hughes. Right, Byredo.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I find Byredo a little bit hit and miss, I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
I am going to go for Bibliothèque in candle form.
Okay, if you don't incidentally have a favorite from these brands, then just say so. Acqua di Parma.
Classic Acqua di Parma cologne, the original.
Just the cologne. No, good choice. Hermes.
Oh, Terra d'Hermes.
Oh, okay. Now that sounds like there's a story there.
I just think it's the sexiest. Well, it's Eleanor again, isn't it? So there you go.
True.
It's Eleanor again, but also it's so sexy. It's exactly the kind of fragrance I love. It's worn by the kind of man I love, in that it's very, very masculine, but very, very soft. It's not butch, it's not hard, it's soft and symphonic, and it's interesting. It's got hidden depth. I absolutely love it, and I bought it for.
Dare we ask if Mr. Sali Hughes wears it?
Yes, he does. So I bought it for
Okay.
him, and it suits him extremely well. I also love wearing it because, I think it's sexy on a woman too, but I just think it's such an extraordinary, special, wonderful fragrance. I do also really love the fruity airport as I always call them. The kind of the green citrus and the pamplemousse and all. I do like those in a different way, but the masterpiece is Terra d'Hermes for me.
No, and I completely agree with you about women wearing it. I went on a sort of let's find a perfume for you shopping spree with one of my nieces, and she ended up choosing Terre, and it really, really suited her.
Oh,
Okay, next. Le Labo.
I'm going to be very basic and say Santal, actually, because I do think it's a great fragrance. I think it's beautiful. I don't wear it. I don't like it on me. However, I really do love it on lots of other people, and I find it remarkable. I do think it's lovely, and some things are popular for a reason.
True. Right, we've got a few more. Maison Francis Kurkdjian.
Right. So I have issues here, because I just think he's such a genius. He's such an amazing perfumer, but I've never found one of his that I love.
Okay.
Obviously, the one you think of is Baccarat Rouge. That's the iconic one, but I've never actually found any of his fragrances that I really love. Looking forward to Dior, really looking forward to all that. I think it's exciting. I think it's interesting. I think it's a good decision. However, I just have never fallen for anything he's done. I'm interested in it. He's hugely talented. He's a force for good. I think he's a great thing, but I have never fallen for any of his scents.
No, that is more than fair enough. How about Tom Ford?
Oh, there's lots of good ones there. Okay, so my favorite of his doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Japonoir, which I absolutely loved, that fragrance, and I wish they'd bring it back at least to Harrods or somewhere in the Tom Ford bar there. Japonoir was my favorite, is my favorite, but I have to give prop. I loved Fleur de Chine as well, but that went. I must give props to Neroli Portofino, because it's so Tom Ford in vibe.
True. Right, we've got 5 to go. How about Armani?
Oh, okay. So my mind, the only Armani fragrance I've ever worn was when I was very, very young. I wore Acqua di Gio like most people. And I think probably I'm going to go with that because it is the most iconic.
Yeah,
For
that's a good
someone
choice.
my age,
Penhaligon's? No, 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 that's fine. Penhaligon's?
lots to love in Penhaligon's. So I really love rackets.
Ah, okay.
I love
And what
rackets.
about Paco Rabanne?
Oh, Paco Rabanne Original Men's Cologne. Delish.
And 2 more. How about Cartier?
So I like Panther, I think. I do like Mr. Cartier, but I think it's I think it's been reformulated and it's less exciting than it was, but I do really, really like it. I'm going to go with Panther.
As in the current one, the Mathilde Laurent one?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. Yeah, me too. And then finally, you may have answered this question or this one already, but what about Chanel?
Oh my God, that's actually so hard. Can I have a few answers? So obviously I have to say my quick fire answer is number 5. It's a fragrance that means so much to me. It is the fragrance to end them all. I love it so, so, so much. I get that not everyone loves it, but I adore it. But I also must shout out Classic Coco, which is absolutely amazing. One of my all-time favorite fragrances. Le Lion, you know how I feel about that. We feel that way about Le Lion. But I also love 31 Rue Cambon.
Oh, all amazing ones there, actually. Right, you
Also,
will be pleased to know that.
19, love 19.
Yes, 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 absolutely. No, thank you for that. You will be pleased to know that that is the end of that quick fire round. Right, there are lots of questions here. I'm just going to sort of I've tried to sort of put them to one side of the chat box so I can find them easily. Let's go with this. This is from Anna, who's saying, Sally, what fragrance family tugs at your heartstrings the most?
That's an easy one for me. I'm a Chypre girl. I just am.
Okay. And you already told me you already told us Mitsuko as well, didn't you? This is a question from Rachel, who says, would you say that the UK has a cultural preference for perfume or scent? Rachel, I wonder whether you mean for a particular perfume or scent, but take that question how you will, Sally.
I think what's so brilliant about perfume these days is that polarizing, more personality-filled fragrances are so much bigger than they were in this country, and that gives me joy. I think 5 years ago I would have said light, fresh, fruity, but I'm not sure I would say that anymore. You know, would you agree? I think it's become a much more interesting playground than it was. I think people are being bolder in their choices. There was definitely a period for many years where when people asked me for a recommendation, they would say clean, fresh, fruity. Whereas these days, I don't get that so much.
Well, there you go. At least Gavin, who's watching, says UK is loud nightclub fragrances.
I'm here for it, Gavin. That's fine with me. Give me that over light, fresh florals any day.
Now, the Holly's asked a question that I actually had on my list, so we'll credit it to Holly. Which discontinuation upset you the most?
God, that's a really good question. Clinique
You can have more than one.
Yeah, Clinique wrappings. Amazing fragrance. I think Clinique is one of the most underrated fragrance houses ever. They're weird fragrances. They're so strange and so peculiar and really clever and admirable. So wrappings and Calyx, which was prescriptives and then became Clinique, those two were a bit of a kick in the guts. Very, very sad that Japonoir went. What else has gone? That Japonoir by Tom Ford. Very, very sad to see the back of that. God, I'm in constant fear for Coco by Chanel. I'm always panicking that they're going to lose that because they're so focused on Coco Mademoiselle, which is obviously a completely different fragrance. And similarly with Miss Dior, I always, I panic and fret about Miss Dior. What else the other Susie Nightingale gave me an absolutely beautiful fragrance that I will God, what was it called? Jolie Madame. That was
What?
absolutely beautiful.
Is it from Balmain?
Yes, and
Yes, okay.
she gave me a little vintage bottle of it recently because she said it's so up your street. I know you're going to love it. And she was bloody right. And of course, I've been scouring eBay looking for a bottle of my own. And you can only get tiny, tiny, tiny baby ones. To get a full-size bottle is really, really hard to come by. So although I wasn't aware of it until it had already gone, I'm sad it has gone because I would absolutely be filling my boots now.
Now, this is an interesting question because another aspect of your biography that I hadn't appreciated was that you had a column in Empire magazine. So this question may be of interest to you. This is from Vetiwera Damio, who says, please tell me in your opinion, how does Cary Grant smell in North by Northwest? Somewhat random, but there you go.
I love this question. So this is my kind of question. These are the questions that I lie in bed at night thinking about. So I think he's got a little bit of a sort of vetiver, sort of like he's smart and crisp and clean. I'm going to say that I think he's got a slightly medicinal, bathroomy smell. I'm going to go for a fragrance that I absolutely love, that I think is so, so, so underrated and so ignored. I'm going to go for Chanel Pour Monsieur.
Oh gosh, that's a good one. In fact, I have an old-ish bottle of that, so I'm going to dig it out and resmell. That's a good choice because it's so suave, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous, and it's, you know, and it's clean and fresh and cologne-y and all of that, but there's a muskiness to it. It's not smutty, but it's dirty enough.
Are you one of these people that as soon as like a scene comes on in a film that's in somebody's bedroom or bathroom or something, you're immediately sort of going, what are the bottles? What are the bottles? What are the bottles?
Yes, and sometimes things drive me absolutely mad if they're wrong. If I think the perfume is wrong, it makes me really, really annoyed. There's a scene in Breakfast at Tiffany's where Holly Golightly is leaving to go. I think she's going to visit the guy in Sing Sing. You know, she's the sort of, you know, kind of call girl for the message taker for the guy in jail. And she's leaving and she puts on her hat and she's kind of getting ready. And she picks up this huge balloon atomizer and sort of sprays herself in this big girly atomizer. And I just don't think that she would do that. I think she would have a cologne. I think she would have something cooler. She would have something more offbeat, more interesting. I don't think she would have a big blousy girly balloon atomizer. And interestingly, I noticed that in the film. And then when I read the book, the novella, in the novella, she does indeed wear men's cologne.
Ah, which that does make sense.
And so in the film, she's got this big, ridiculous kind of, you know, a kind of dressing table thing.
Yeah.
But in the book, she wears a men's cologne, which is much more true and interesting about the character. She's not this stereotypical girly girl in the book, but she becomes that in the film.
And one thing that I found, not that I've done like a scientific survey, but I've often found, unsurprisingly, that French movies tend to get the perfume in the bathroom thing right more often than movies from other countries, because maybe it's just something that they naturally would give more thought to. But anyway,
I think if you have loads of thought, you shouldn't put a perfume in the scene because it sets off all the perfume nerds so much that if it's wrong, I can't suspend my disbelief. It makes me so crazy.
No, totally agree. Now, here's a question from Stephen, completely different sort of area. What are your thoughts on IFRA and regulatory limitations on ingredients? Is it necessary in all cases, or is it making perfumery too restrictive?
I think money comes into it. So I don't think it necessarily makes fragrance technically too restrictive, but it depends how much time and money a brand is able to devote to adapting sympathetically. So I think if you look at, say, Chanel, I think Chanel have done it right. Whatever else you think about Chanel, Chanel are obsessive about their assets and about their heritage. And so they obsessively over many years replace contentious ingredients in the most sympathetic way. Then we've seen other big perfume houses who've just gone, oh, swap everything. and they've destroyed perfumes. And so I think if you're a house who has the attitude and the money required to follow those regulations in a very slow and careful and sympathetic manner, then great. But I was talking to Lynn Harris the other day, and she was saying, you know, it's a nightmare for a perfumer. It is an absolute nightmare. You're constantly, there are some perfumes where basically you're having to take them apart and completely start again, because it's so difficult to meet all the regulations and new ones all the time. And she said, from a perfumer's point of view, it's incredibly challenging. If you're a Chanel, you do it, right? Or if you're a big house that just needs a brand name, maybe you don't care enough and you're going to make the money anyway. But for someone like Lynn Harris, who's incredibly meticulous, but also a one-woman operation, a very small brand, then I think it's very challenging, yes.
Now, you've mentioned Lynn Harris, British brand, and I know that your skincare brand also, I think it was very important for you for it to have a very strong British identity. What would you say is the current state of the British perfume industry, if we could even use such a term? Do you think it's in a good place at the moment?
That's an interesting question. I certainly think it's a good time for perfume generally, and Britain will benefit from that. We know, you will already know, Darish, really well yourself, that perfume thrived in lockdown, but specifically cult, niche, individual perfumes. Premium prestige perfumes didn't do very well at all in lockdown because of the lost department store. However, niche, special, independent perfumers did really great, and that can only be a good thing for British perfumers. Are there enough British perfumers? No. Do they get any support whatsoever from a government who should be investing in its arts, which I would consider perfume to be one? No, certainly not. There are certainly not enough perfumers of colour, and there are certainly not enough female perfumers. I think it's really about culture. Does British culture value perfumery in the way that French culture does, for example? No, absolutely not. And I think it comes from there down, and I don't think British will thrive to its full potential until culturally we value it as art.
No, and I would agree with you. I would agree with you, sadly. Now, time is running out. I'd like to talk a little bit about the online world as well, and the world of influencers and this thing that we're doing here now. You know, this guy who set up a YouTube channel and then talks about perfume and write about perfume. What's your take on the fact that so much of the industry is not led necessarily, but influenced by these people who just set themselves up almost overnight as experts, whereas on the other hand, you know, we've got the likes of you, who's got several years of experience in genuine, accountable journalism. What do you make of all of that?
Can I spin cycle? I can. I'm just going to turn it off.
Well, we couldn't, but it doesn't matter.
Sorry.
No, I genuinely couldn't hear anything. Although I love the fact that we have to stop for the washing. No, so go on. Did you hear the question though?
Influencers setting themselves up as perfume experts.
Yes,
overnight.
and all of that world, you know, that reality that we're in now, where, you know, somebody like you who has got genuine bona fide credentials on Instagram has to, in a way, be competing online against somebody who doesn't. What do you make of all of that?
So on the whole, I feel pretty good about it. The reason I feel pretty good about it is that I think that perfume needs to be more accessible, and it needs to embrace people who love perfume. I think what I have always felt about this industry is that people who love perfume are nice people who are interesting and have something to say. And I think there are different ways of talking about perfume. My thing with fragrance was always that I just hated the way fragrance press releases were written. I just didn't want to write about perfume in that way. I always wanted to write about, what does it make you think of? How does it make you feel? What does it remind you of? And I think the more kind of human, accessible language involved in perfumery, the better. However, I do find it slightly dispiriting sometimes when I see somebody, you know, who's pretty, who's advertising a major perfume that actually has a really interesting story about it. You know, you see someone kind of running through the buttercups holding a bottle of perfume, and that's a kind of campaign. But there's definitely a place for that if there's also storytelling alongside it. So I can't even get that worked up about that, because I just think there are lots of ways to skin a cat, and I'm all for people. I think perfume has a problem. I think the perfume community historically has had a problem, which is that you can't sit with us. And I know that in reality, it's not that. The people in the perfume community are actually really warm and friendly people. But I think what has put people off historically is, I don't know enough about perfume to talk about it. And I don't think that should be, I don't think that is important. If it makes you feel something, if it takes you somewhere emotionally, if it makes you remember something, if it makes you laugh, if it makes you cry, if it makes you swoon, whatever it is, I think that your voice is valid. It's such, perfume is magic. It's very unique in beauty, I think, in that, makeup artistry is about art. It's about art and illusion and artifice. And skin is about science, but perfume is about magic. Like, it's so undefinable, it's so untouchable, it's so elusive. And I think if somebody feels something from a perfume and wants to share it, I don't care if they know what a chypre is. Personally, I don't care. I think they should just say it, and they are welcome, I think, in our community, or should be.
That's a great answer. Thank you. So if I could sum up, would you say that the democratization is a very, very good thing? And if the price we have to pay is that there are some people who just sort of say a few things because they want to get a few samples, then that's a small price to pay.
Well, I mean, bloody hell, there's so much of that in other parts of beauty. I have more concerns about a total lack of expertise in other parts of beauty, or people testing products that they've never even, people reviewing products that I know for a fact they've never tested. People doing commercial jobs over products that I know for a fact don't even exist yet, because I've already turned down the job because samples were not able for me to try. I see other people talking about them all over the internet. So there is a definite problem across the industry, but I don't need everybody who talks about perfume to be a nerd about it. And I think we need to welcome people who just love perfume, and if they love it, I think they should be welcome.
But you know what you just said about, for example, this, well, blatant dishonesty, I suppose, people praising something that they haven't even tried. Is that being addressed in some way? Are there some people who, somewhere behind the scenes at least are calling this out and trying to put an end to it?
I don't know about that. There've been quite a few situations where I've been approached about, a campaign of some kind around a fragrance, around a different kind of product. And I've said to my agent, oh, well, they need to send me the product and I'm going to need to use it for a few weeks, and then I'll let you know if I'm in it. And then he'll come back to me and they've said to him, oh, no, we don't have the product yet, but we need to know if she's going to do it. And so at that point, we're obviously like, well, no. But then literally a few days later, I'll see somebody else doing it online and think, okay. But I mean, what can I do about that? You can only keep your side of the street clean. And I'm not interested in all that bloody calling out business, all those kind of gossip sites. They'll say any old crap anyway. They don't give a damn what's true or not. There's as much dishonesty in that as the thing they're trying to call out. So I just focus on feeling good about my own decisions and feeling that I've done my due diligence and follow my true opinion and my love for things. And perfume is a very easy one to do because it's so subjective and it's so instant. There are some examples of things I don't like on first spritz and grow to love, and certainly things that I love that I hate within a week, but it doesn't happen very often. Mostly I know straight away if I love something or not. I think if you have the enthusiasm and you have the love, then that's the thing for perfume, however much or little you know. I was properly trained in perfume, and I think that's the other thing. When I learned about perfume, I went to Guerlain and I did training, and those resources don't exist in the same way anymore. So would I know as much about it now if I started out now when budgets are cut and all that kind of thing? Probably not, but I wouldn't want my enthusiasm to be judged harshly because I didn't have the knowledge to back it up.
Have you ever been tempted to start your own perfume brand? I mean, I should actually say that this is a question from Angela. She said, would you be interested in your own fragrance line?
Wouldn't mind doing a candle. Quite fancy quite fancy doing a candle, like maybe a charity collaboration. I've thought about maybe doing a candle for Beauty Banks, my charity. Yeah. So wouldn't mind doing a fundraising candle with a perfume house who wanted to do it. But that, I think that's.
It sounds like you already know what its smell would be.
Oh well, I know what I like. I know what I like for
Okay.
sure. But if a perfumer ever wanted to make a candle with me for charity, I would certainly be up for that. I think that's as far as it goes. I don't think I would make a fragrance because I'm not a perfumer, and you know, my great obsession in life is films, and I don't want to make a film either. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
No.
you know, sometimes to really enjoy something, you need to be outside of it to some degree.
Okay, brilliant. Now we're nearly out of time. Just a few quick questions. Who would you say has been amongst the most interesting perfume industry figures that you've interviewed?
Oh, that's a good one. So I'm very lucky. I've interviewed lots and lots and lots of perfumers and perfume. I mean, I love Monsieur Mal. I've interviewed him a few times. So Frederick Mal, who obviously is not a perfumer, but I think the position he holds is very interesting, unique. He's essentially a commissioning editor. I think he's a sort of journalist in a way. So Frederick Mal is really, really interesting. I love Lynn Harris. I think, you know, she's so interesting and so talented, and makes beautiful, beautiful fragrances. Terry Vassar is a really great interview. He's very good at it. I've never interviewed Eleanor. So Jean-Claude Eleanor, as I say, is my favorite perfumer. And he's an interesting one because I think he's very cerebral. I think he's very in his head and less talky. So I don't know how brilliant an interviewer he'd be. I'm not sure, but I do find him so intriguing and talented and enigmatic that I would quite like to do something with him.
So you kind of answered my next question, but of the people who are no longer with us, sadly, who would you most like to have interviewed? And maybe this doesn't actually need to be a perfume person. Maybe it could be a film person as well.
Oh, I think in perfumery, I would have really liked to have interviewed Ernest Beau, maybe.
Oh gosh.
Because I'm very interested in the kind of intersection between chemistry, between classic chemistry and perfumery, which is what he was. And also working to a brief that is so exacting and so specific from a fashion designer, but at the same time who had no technical expertise in interpreting that brief. I find that very interesting. How did we end up with number 5? I mean, I know the history of number 5, but how in his head did we get there? I would have liked to have met him.
So him over Chanel herself, would you say, or?
No, I would have obviously loved to Coco Chanel. And Mrs. Lauder. I think Mrs. Lauder is a very, very interesting person, particularly in perfumery, because you know, she wasn't desirable as a seller of perfume because you needed to be French and you needed to have something to do with fashion. And, you know, she was a Jewish American woman who had nothing to do with fashion. She was a mum, and she got out there and hustled and also made it acceptable for women to buy perfume for themselves, which I think, you know, is an absolute vibe.
And your own books aside, obviously, recommended though they are by lots and lots of people, what are the sort of 1 or 2 books that you would say people should read if they want to kind of get themselves a little bit more clued up about the industry and good products and things?
I would so Luca Turin and Tanya Sanchez are the obvious choice, but they are the correct choice in my view. I think if when people tell me they've got into perfume through watching my videos and now they really love perfume and where can they find out more about perfume, I do always direct them towards the original classic book, the Perfumes A to Z book from Turin and Sanchez, because it's not just the best book on perfume, it's one of my favorite books ever. And you know, just to sit and curl up with it is such an absolute joy. They both write so beautifully. We often agree on perfumes, sometimes disagree, but that's not the point. They take you into a world that is obviously incredibly expert and refined, but not snobby and judgmental and exclusive. You know, it welcomes you into the strange but wonderful world of perfumery, and I think they're magic for doing that beautifully.
No, and endlessly rereadable, I'd agree. So, Sally, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for doing. I could have talked to you for at least another hour, and I'm sure the people watching could have listened to you for at least another hour. Thank you very much to everybody for watching, actually, and for asking such great questions. As I say, Sally's next book is out in September, called Everything is Washable. You can find out about everything else that she's up to on her Instagram and on her website. But I will ask one final question and then we'll go. If you could give one message to the perfume industry to sort of say, look, in order to improve, you now need to ... what would you say?
I mean, this feels like a part 2 in the making. We should do a part 2 just on this massive subject. But the short answer to that is, I would like the fragrance industry to stop trying to make things that everybody likes. Because when you try and make things that everybody likes, they are just utterly boring and basic and substandard. Don't be afraid to do something polarizing, because every fragrance I love is hated by someone, and that's the way I like it.
And that is very, very true. And that is a good note on which to end. Thank you so much, Sally. Thank you very much for giving up so much time.
Thank you, guys. See you next time, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon.